Mr. Anderson. So give a big clap for them. Speaking of Writers Week's age, Writers Week is 29 years old this year, having begun in 1995. You can clap for that. That's good. In its second year, legendary poet and author Gwendolyn Brooks graced this very stage. Our next guest, Eden Robbins, was a senior in the crowd in 1996, taking in the magic that is Writers Week. Some of the enormity of Writers Week's genesis is its reciprocal nature. Today, several Fremd alumni are forming the core of writers helping to propel it forward. Eden returns to Writers Week today, having published her first novel, When Franny Stands Up. Set in post-World War II Americana, protagonist Franny Steinberg discovers comedy and its ability to push social boundaries. She uses its force as a weapon to weaponize the traumas of her life. The ethereal voice in When Franny Stands Up is authentic, genuine, and honest, which helps the reader connect to Franny and makes them want to stand up with her. It is my pleasure to introduce Eden Robbins.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Eden Robbins. He already stole my thunder there. This is me with a mustache. This is also me at Fremd in around 1995. What I've got here is I'm getting ready for an 80s themed party, displaying my collection of junior mints for some reason that I don't remember, and displaying my dissected cat. We didn't take a lot of photos in those days. We didn't have phones, so this is the weird assortment that I could find. I graduated from Fremd in 1996, which means I probably, actually definitely, went to high school with some of your parents. I know that for a fact because they're in here. I was a student at the very first Writers Week ever, which happened on this stage. And I wasn't on this stage, I was out there. And it blew my mind. And I'd say my biggest claim to fame in high school was that I won the state championship in the speech team event of radio speaking. So if you like the sound of my voice, you have the Fremd speech team to thank. If you hate the sound of my voice, you can complain to them afterwards. This is my book, here. It came out in November. It's my first book, and it's called When Franny Stands Up. I like to say it's a queer, marvelous Mrs. Maisel where jokes are magic. I also call it a comedy about trauma. It takes place just after World War II in Chicago, where women run stand-up comedy and have developed a kind of magic called a showstopper, where each comedian inflicts a particular experience in her audience. One comedian's showstopper makes you feel like a Hollywood starlet, another like you can fly, and another makes you feel that satisfaction of arriving at the corner just as the bus arrives. So there's a range of fun experiences. In the book, 23-year-old Franny Steinberg is reeling from her own personal traumas, and her brother has just returned from the war with PTSD. Her family is falling apart and pretending everything is fine. Franny ends up stumbling into stand-up and starts to believe she can fix herself and heal her brother through comedy, though of course it doesn't work out that way. So here is the plan. I'm gonna read a little bit from When Franny Stands Up. We're gonna do a quick poll. I will give you some wise wisdom you can take with you. And then we'll do a short reading from a new project I have never showed anyone except for the period before this. So it's brand new, and I hope that you will be nice to me. And then we'll do a Q&A. Sound okay? If it doesn't, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. So here we go. That book again. I am going to read from a section where the title character, Franny, has just had a traumatic flashback at her best friend's wedding and has run away in her bridesmaid's dress to the Blue Moon, a comedy club in Chicago that is run by a mobster named Fingers Marconi and his wife, Lottie Marconi. A girl in wrinkled nylons gripped the microphone and warbled dirty parody lyrics to a record of Oh My Darling Clementine. The record was louder than her voice, so mercifully her jokes about the miner stooping his sister were drowned out. Unfortunately, not entirely. Franny stood in the doorway to the Blue Moon and thought maybe she had made some mistake. Barb the bouncer was napping with her head pressed to the doorframe, cap as a pillow, a lit cigarette sticking to her bottom lip as she snored lightly. All the lights were on, and without the mysterious cover of darkness and smoke, exciting perfumes, and the chatter of women, the club felt too real, embarrassingly so, like catching Eleanor Roosevelt on the toilet. The club was nearly empty, except for the girl on stage, two skinny girls smoking at a side booth to the right, and Lottie Marconi slumped over a highball glass at a bar stool. She looked up when Franny entered, and Franny froze with a dumb smile on her face. But as she anticipated, Lottie didn't recognize her, just picked up her highball and clinked the ice cubes, which brought out the bartender from around a hidden corner, wiping her hands on a dirty towel. The record ended, and the thin girl finished her song on a sour high note, then paused as if waiting for applause. When none came, Franny clapped enthusiastically, but the girl just scowled at her, heaved the record player off the stool, and stalked off stage. Lottie wore white pedal pushers and a green plaid blouse tied at the midriff, and Franny didn't see an ankle gun, so that was a good sign. When she applauded, Lottie turned to glare at her. "What are you, anyway, a princess?" It was one thing to face Lottie Marconi in the dark, in a crowd, and a whole other thing to pretend she was just a regular person. Somewhere between princess and frog, actually, Franny said. Lottie lifted her highball for a sip and then slammed it back down. "You're that smartass I tossed out on Thursday," she said. "This day just keeps getting better and better." She tilted her head back and downed the drink. Barb the bouncer chuckled, adjusted her posture, and somehow never lost the cigarette. Franny took courage from the fact that she had neither been thrown out or shot and heaved herself onto a bar stool. "I could be wrong," Lottie said into her empty glass, "but it appears you're even closer to me than you were before." "And here I thought bar stools were for sitting," Franny said. After everything that had happened, here she was, sassing Lottie Marconi to her face again. What was it about this place that loosened her tongue, but when it really mattered, when she really had something important to say, her voice took a permanent vacation? Franny became very interested in pretending to read the bar menu, felt Lottie's eyes boring into her. "That is a ghastly dress," Lottie said. "I was going for aquatic enema bag," Franny said, not looking up. "How'd I do?" Lottie laughed. "Well, you won't make it on the cover of Vogue," she said. "I'll say that much. You'll see. Next season, this look will be all the rage. Girls everywhere clamoring for a dumpy Jewish tuchus." This really seemed to tickle Lottie, and she let out a girlish, tinkling laugh that lit up her whole face. The laugh burrowed inside Franny like a tapeworm. It terrified her to realize she would starve herself to feed it. The occasional rumor about Lottie Marconi popped up in the papers. The Tiger engagement, nonsensical comments about preferring girls over boys, who didn't, an unwanted come-on from one of Finger's men that ended in bloodshed from Lottie's pocket nail file. And seeing Lottie face-to-face should have exposed them as absurd fables. But somehow these rumors now seemed exceedingly possible. There was something about Lottie that was both real and unreal. You would think all her mystery would evaporate with the harsh lighting, but Franny just wanted to look closer. Glossy black hair pulled back in a ponytail that curled slightly at the ends, narrow honey-colored eyes, lips in a mean smile making an arrow of her Roman nose. She was pretty, sure, but it was more than that. It was the reason Franny humped up on the stool instead of running away again. That something made her chest warm. She wanted to be near it. She wanted some of it for herself. Franny felt great. Was that a feeling a person could have? "Get this Jewish princess a glass of bubbly, Enid," Lottie said, relighting her cigarette. "My treat. What's your story, pretty enema bag?" The blonde bartender slid a flute of champagne across the bar. Franny took a big gulp, blushed, and struggled with the knotting of her tongue. She would not clam up, not now. "I couldn't hack it as a bridesmaid," she said. "Cold feet." "The bridesmaid ran away," Lottie said. "That's a new one." She leaned back, regarded Franny with a smirk. "Hello, which one of us is next?" One of the girls in the booth called. Franny had forgotten all about them. Lottie ignored them and held out her free hand to Franny. "Lottie Marconi," she said. "I run the place." What was your name again?" she asked. "Steingold, Goldstein." She said it in a mocking Yiddish accent. "Franny Steinberg." Lottie snorted. "That will not do," she said. "Sorry to disappoint." "Too Jewish, she made a face. "You need something lighter, more fun. Jews aren't any fun. What about Peggy?" "What about her?" Franny said. Yeah, Peggy. We'll think about a last name, something quick, one syllable, easy to remember. Blake, Barb called. Lottie Marconi took a drag of her cigarette and nodded. You're a pro, Barb. That's perfect. Peggy Blake. Okay, Peggy Blake, you're next. I'm lost, Franny said. Who are we talking about? Lottie shoved her shoulder. You. This is amateur hour, and you're the next amateur. Tell us all about being a runaway bridesmaid. Make me laugh again. I could use a laugh today, I'll tell you what. Franny was not finding any of this even remotely funny. I'm here to see Boopsie Baxter, she said, ideally from the audience. Lottie's smile faded. Gosh, for a second there, I had forgotten how we met, she said. Too bad I left my piece at home. I bet that would convince you. I don't know, Lottie. Looks like you got a piece right there next to you, Barb said. Franny could still feel Peter's handprint on her sweaty back, and there it was, the twinge of an oncoming bellyache. What was she even doing here? Franny didn't tell jokes. She was the butt of them. Lottie grabbed Franny's forearm before she could slide off the stool. Make me laugh, she said, and you can stay. And if I can't? Lottie ashed her cigarette into Franny's champagne. Let's not be morbid, sweetheart. Maybe they'll have you at the Velvet Swing. Have you is right, a little spicy entertainment. Barb puffed out a guffaw. Papa loved to point out Fingers Marconi stories when they popped up in the Tribune. Fingers Macaroni strikes again, he always said. Getting a little handsy, isn't he? Franny would say. It was fun because it was like a movie, a drama unfolding in an imaginary life far, far away. But now Franny sat knee to knee with the real gangster's real wife, whose closet seemed like it might contain even more skeletons than her husband's, with Franny one wrong decision away from becoming a headline herself. And yet, the door to the Blue Moon was more than just a door, it was a portal. Here or there, uncertain future or painful past, possible finger loss or definite bellyache. Franny had 10 fingers and hardly used them all on a regular basis anyway. She smoothed her gauzy dress, patted her flyaway hair, and took the longest walk of her life up to the stage of the Blue Moon. How come she gets to go? A girl whined as she passed their booth. We was here first. A microphone was set up on the small, low stage in front of the house band's snare drum, with very little room in between for standing. There was, Franny noticed, a naked, Greek-ish statue of a woman glaring from over her right shoulder. They were all glaring at her. The three girls, Lottie with her burning cigarette, even Barb had cocked an eye open to watch, and the bartender had stopped wiping glasses. Franny's legs started to shake. What words did she know? Her brain was full of thoughts, none of them useful. Time sped up and stopped. She forgot how to breathe. How did sentences work again? Somehow, she was even watching herself, sweaty, mouth breathing. Oh, just perfect, she thought. Two Frannys, neither of them capable of speech. Say something, a girl whined. Hello, ladies and germs, Franny tried. She had heard Milton Berle start that way on Texaco Star Theater, but the girls in the audience groaned. Lottie clinked the ice in her empty glass. The clinking echoed in Franny's head like shattering teeth, like dice rolling out the odds of her getting out of here alive. The microphone was so far away, it was practically on another planet, and yet her heart pounded so loud she was sure everyone could hear. Franny said, a man that crawls in the morning, walks at noon, and has a cane at midnight? Wait. No, she shook her head. Let me try that again. What's something? That's a riddle, a girl shouted. Who is this joker, Lottie? Not joker, more like, said another. Lottie slid off the stool like a dancer and started a slow, determined walk to the stage. Wait, no, Franny said, I got one. The girls started to boo. Someone threw an ice cube at Franny, missed, and it cracked against the wall behind her. Lottie was maybe 5 steps away from the stage, and she did not look like a person who would be sympathetic to stage fright. She had told Franny to make her laugh, and Franny had failed. And, well, just because a person didn't have a gun didn't mean she wasn't dangerous. Franny was being stalked like prey by a tiny woman in a ponytail. Anything could be a weapon in the right hands, even jokes. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to do a quick poll. Who wants to be a writer? Raise your hand. Anybody? Yeah, a couple? Couple two tree, as we say? Okay. Who has had someone in their life try to talk them out of being a writer? Okay. How many people would consider being writers if it wasn't for all the people trying to talk you out of it? Aha. Yeah, got it. Okay. And then finally, is anyone willing to share what reason you got for not being a writer? You just shout it out. Is one of them money? Okay. Yes. Okay, great. Well, guess what? I'm going to try to talk you into it. Maybe the only person ever who will try to talk you into being a writer, even if you don't want to be one. In order to do that, we need to debunk some myths. First myth. It's too hard. You won't make it. You really think you have something worthwhile to say? You might hear things like this from other people or in your own head. They seem honest and helpful, but really, all they boil down to is fear. Fear can be useful. It can keep us safe, but it's not really the best decision maker. And in this case, when someone tells us writing is too hard, or do we really have something to say, a lot of times what they're afraid of is uncertainty. I hate uncertainty. It's so uncertain. It would be nice to be sure that we'd make it, or sure that we definitely have the most important thing to say, or sure that we're not going to get hit by a bus tomorrow. But we just are never going to have that satisfaction. Some things in life might seem more certain than others, like you're probably not going to get hit by a bus tomorrow. But it's still just an illusion. It's all uncertain. And this may sound scary, but it can actually be freeing. If we don't know, then the future could hold anything. And as someone who is comparatively elderly, I can tell you that there will be triumphs and losses no matter what you choose in life. I spent 12 years trying to get a book published, and I had my heart broken several times. It nearly happened one time, and then the publisher went out of business. And then I wrote 2 more books that were terrible. And then I finally wrote When Franny Stands Up, and it was published. None of this was inevitable, though, but there's something to be said for trying anyway. As for not having something to say, you are unique in the entire universe. No one has ever been you in the whole history of time. What are the odds that you wouldn't have something to say about that? And if you have a voice that historically people have not listened to, whether you are BIPOC, queer, trans, or non-binary, disabled, or neurodiverse, consider this message doubly loud for you. Money, as in you won't have any. I wish I could tell you that we live in a world that values art and creativity, but we don't. So this one's true. I'm hopeful that this is changing, but in the present moment, I can tell you that like 99% of the authors you love have other jobs, or a partner with a job, or family money. And I'm not trying to burst your bubble here. I actually think this can be very empowering because you won't think it's the norm to get rich off writing. And that frees you up to build an interesting life that works for you. In a country that demands you make your job your identity, you get to question that. Your non-writing work can feed your interests. I've had a bunch of jobs over the years. Right now, I write for a mental health app that helps people through tough times. In the past, I worked in a sex toy store. I've taught kids and adults. I worked in a museum, and I've written all kinds of articles and essays and video scripts and websites. I love the whispering that happens after I say that. You can find something that allows for flexibility and time for you to prioritize writing. We live in a time and a place that is unkind to working people, so protecting yourself financially is important. But I like to think of my job as an old-timey patron who gives me money to make art. The point is, it's not ideal, but it's doable. And unless you're a runaway success, this is what most writers are doing to support their writing. So don't worry about it. Nobody reads, and nobody cares. In a literal sense, this is not true. There wouldn't be a publishing industry if no one read or cared. But in a philosophical sense, it is kind of true. There's no one out there, really, who is clamoring for your words and your perspective, who's counting down the days until you publish. Even once you do publish, even then, no one is beating down your door for more you. I can tell you that for a fact. I promise this is good news, though. This means you get to follow your interests. What lights you up inside? What gets you excited? What do you read and care about? Being a writer means it is literally your job to figure that out and to do it. You can find the world's indifference depressing, or you can find it hugely freeing. And as you figure out the stories you want to tell, this search can also take you unexpected places to meet unexpected people. If you had asked me when I was at Fremd if I thought I would meet a deep-sea marine biologist and get to travel 6,000 feet below sea level in the Alvin submersible just so I could write about it, I would not have believed you. And yet, oh, there's me, 6,000 feet under the sea. Writing leaves, oh, cool, thanks. I didn't drive it or anything, I just sat there, but writing leaves room for the unexpected, the unplanned, which is just a friendlier way of saying uncertainty, by the way. If nobody cares, then you're free to figure out what kind of life works for you. The world is crumbling. Shouldn't you be doing something useful instead? This always sounds weirdly puritanical to me, as though useful work always has a direct and immediate and obvious effect on the world and is defined by how much you hate it. Artistic work that is enjoyable and doesn't affect the bottom line is considered at the very least frivolous, if not outright suspect. But have you ever tried to make yourself do something because it's supposed to be good and virtuous? You might be able to force yourself for a little while, but it's not sustainable. Enjoying what you do is key to doing it long term. It's the writer's job to look unflinchingly at the way things are and make something beautiful or interesting or scary or funny out of it. Something that only that writer can do. Is that useful? Maybe. But is utility the only kind of life to live? The only way to be of service? Don't those of us who live in a crumbling world deserve humor and beauty and interesting stuff too? Okay, anybody ever read a book that totally changed how you think? Anybody ever read a book that saved your life? It's a lot of work to stay alive emotionally as you age. I can't explain to you why that is. It's just a fact. But writing is a practice of feeling alive, staying open to curiosity and confusion, staying humble and free and compassionate. And personally, I think that's pretty useful in this world and whatever is coming next. So in conclusion, don't let them scare you. There are a million ways to live a life. This goes for everything. All of them are uncertain, even if they don't seem that way. So don't let other people scare you out of the life you need to lead. If writing is the life you want, then it is the life that wants you too. And now I get off my soapbox. Okay, do one more thing. Brief reading from my new project. This isn't a picture of me. This is a still life by Cézanne. I just like it. It has a skull in it. I'm writing a new novel. It's still very much in progress. I only read aloud from it for the first time last period, so this is the second time. It's super scary. But this section takes place at Writers' Week, and so it's on this stage. If there was any time to read it, I figured it was now. The story is a novel told through linked obituaries. This one is written by the fictional faculty advisor of the Viking Log, whose name is Sheila. And there are comments from the principal, which I will show on the slides. This is a world where Anne Frank survived the Holocaust, became a poet, and spoke on stage at Fremd for Writers' Week. Unpublished draft with editorial notes. Viking Log, September 24th, 2010. Annalise Marie Anne Frank, poet, Holocaust survivor, and frequent Writers' Week visitor, died 2 weeks ago. She was 81. Anne Frank was one of the very first visiting writers to Fremd High School's very first Writers' Week. A tiny woman in sturdy heels, she looked so frail up there on stage in the auditorium, as though held together by the structure of her blouse and skirt. Her voice was strong and deep and full of humor. She survived Auschwitz and the Polish labor camp Libau, having narrowly missed the transport to Bergen-Belsen, where her mother, Edith, and sister Margot perished, her debilitating scabies having miraculously healed mere days beforehand. Reunited with her father Otto after the war, her original plan was to compile and edit the diary she had kept while hiding with her family in Amsterdam. But when Otto presented her with the red and white checkered book filled with her childish scribbles, Frank discovered she could not bear to read it. "The girl who wrote those entries is dead," she said on stage at Writers' Week. "I had to bury her. I couldn't force her to speak." Instead, she turned to poetry, though at least initially her poems omitted any mention of the atrocities she experienced. You could smell it in the curve of her vowels, in the moist crevices between letters, in the cool, dry, white desert at the end of a stanza. And then, in 1956, she would gain international notoriety and, in some, let us say, more repressed countries, the United States, infamy and censorship for her Dutch language novel, Natapush, a scandalous title, softened in English to One Woman's Water. In the novel, Frank explored her own healing from trauma through her many sexual escapades, even hinting obliquely at the true parentage of her own daughter, Margot, rumored to be fathered by a Catholic priest. When one of my fellow students asked why an old lady would write about sex, she took the question just as seriously and lightheartedly as she took anything. "Desire," she said, "is the only emotion that can't be tricked. Be careful. It is so easy to spend your whole life like money and lie. Desire is fun and funny, but you're a fool if you mock it." Anneliese Marie Frank was born in Frankfurt, Germany, to Edith and Otto Frank, but spent most of her childhood in Amsterdam, Netherlands. We know her family hid in the building where her father worked from 1942 to 1944. We know they were betrayed, discovered, and sent to Auschwitz. We know Anne and Otto were the only family members to survive. Anne was carried out of the Libau labor camp to freedom tenderly by men who were used to carrying guns. Soon after, she emigrated to Chicago. She remained deeply ambivalent about sharing the details of her life's traumas directly. In a 1977 interview in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, she was asked about her responsibility to share her experiences so they might never recur. On the one hand, she said, history is indeed a living, breathing bear, hibernating in the singular minds of those who endure it. On the other hand, am I not permitted to live my life as I choose? Am I not permitted to at least attempt it? Perhaps what Anne Frank was really asking was, can the absence of words tell a story? Like a pattern in lace, the holes as important as the threads? After her reading at Writers' Week, she held court in the library, allowing a long, snaking line of dreamy poets, drama kids, misfits, and dorks to ask her for autographs and stare awkwardly. My feet deposited me in the line, even as my heart pounded and vision tunneled. I was desperate to escape. What could I possibly say to this incredible poet whose poems made me feel funny inside, the kind of funny that upset local mothers so much they were calling the principal nonstop? In Anne, I had a real Jewish role model, a real artist to look up to. I was otherwise adrift among friends who treated me just a little differently or told me I was going to hell, or both. Did I say any of this to her? No, I did not. She grabbed my hands in her soft, dry ones, and I blurted out, "I'm glad you made it." Hot tears rolled down my face. She handed me an embroidered handkerchief and told me to keep it. She said something softly about a secret that I didn't quite catch and was too embarrassed to ask her to repeat. She rummaged through her carpet bag-sized purse and pulled out an ancient red and white checkered book, fuzzy-cornered and curled over itself, sealed with a tiny rusted padlock and written in a smudged, barely legible pencil in a language I couldn't read anyway. "Take it," she whispered, and then she winked. Why me? Sometime between then and now, I lost the notebook. I was furious at myself for years, believing she had given it to me so I would publish it for her. But now I believe she gave it to me so I would lose it. The art of losing isn't hard to master, unlike every other art. Anne Frank wasn't trying to outrun a wretched past. She was trying to create a future she could live in. The compost of her trauma bloomed with brilliant poppies like battlefields do. She believed that all human connection, a handshake, a glance, an orgasm, a poem, a movie theater filled with laughing strangers, this was the life force, the libido, that made her believe in the possibility of a better, kinder, more just world. Thanks. So, hey, thanks for listening. Any questions? Yeah. Have I ever experienced writer's block? Yes, absolutely. I feel like writer's block a lot of times, this is my theory, you may disagree with it. I think that we have a real thing for productivity in this country that if you're not always moving forward, getting better, getting faster, getting more efficient, that there's somehow something wrong with you. But I think that art is more cyclical. It's a lot more like the seasons, and there are periods where you're just not going to be able to do it, and that's okay because you're doing something else. You're absorbing, you're whatever, having fun, living your life. So I feel like writer's block is just your body telling you to take a break. And like literally nothing I've ever done, if I took a break, I didn't, if I came back to it after a break, I was able to figure it out. So it's just hard to give yourself the permission to take a break when you're feeling that feeling. But that's my cure for it. It's like really hard to see. Hi. What inspired me to be a writer? Well, I've always loved to read. I used to, I'm showing myself here, everybody, as the huge nerd that I am, but I used to win the reading contests at the Palatine Public Library over the summer. The ones where, okay. I don't know that deserved applause, but thank you. Where the prize is another book, and I was like, ooh, another book. So I love to read, and it just never occurred to me that I could write. When I was in high school and when I was in college, I really wanted to be a scientist. I studied biology in college and anthropology. And I don't know, I mean, like some of you, I didn't think that I could make it as a writer. I didn't think I had anything to say. And then I started reading these books, and as the books changed and the stories changed, I was like, oh my God, maybe I can do this, and I at least want to try. So when I was in my mid to late 20s, I started trying to figure out how to write a novel. Oh, wow, you guys are clap happy. Other questions? Like, you can, if you have a question, you can just say it, because oh, hi, yeah. If I could go back to my high school self, what would I tell myself to do differently? That's a good question. Just relax. Don't worry about it so much. I think, I know this isn't everybody's high school experience, but mine was definitely like, I just felt like I had to drive myself to this state of perfection and overwork and all of this stuff because it seemed to me like that the only way to have a future was to behave that way. And it's not true, not even close. So I think I would just be like, hey, slow down, and it's okay not to work so hard. It's high school. It's going to be fine. So. Yeah, everybody. Is anybody who's not over here have a question first? If not, we'll go back. Okay. No. You guys are great, but you're just, I just want to look around, make sure anybody else. Yeah, go ahead. What is my favorite part about the writing process? It's hard to plan for, but I like the moment where things start to come together in an unexpected way. So like when your unconscious is working overtime to process all this information, and then it just like feeds you like, ta-da, this beautiful connection or this beautiful scene that you never would have gotten if you had planned for it. That's my favorite bit. I also really like being done. Revising also. The thing about writer's block and writing is that like, rough drafts are really hard. It's really hard to make something from nothing. But with revision, you have something already on the page that you can use and play with for as long as you want. And I know when you're in high school, like there's a lot of like last minute, like, oh, I'm writing this thing last minute. So there's not really, I don't think I started revising until I was out of college, but it's really fun. It's way more fun than writing the thing the first time. Okay, yes. Oh, wow. Gosh. What do you guys like to read? I don't know. What's somebody's favorite book? Seriously? Yeah. Okay. Sci-fi. Have you read any Octavia Butler? Okay. I highly recommend Octavia Butler. Kindred is one of my favorites. Parable of the Sower. She wrote it years and years and years ago, but it's so extremely relevant right now. Those would be the two that I would recommend. There's also an author named N.K. Jemisin who wrote the fifth season, which is a trilogy. I highly recommend those. Did I see somebody back there with the hands up? You guys are in the dark, so I can't see if so. Okay. Oh, great, yeah. It depends on the project. When Franny stands up, I actually, this is my dirty secret, I used a book called The 90-Day Novel because I just needed some help and some scaffolding, and it kind of walks you through the process of writing a rough draft in 3 months. So I did do some outlining for this, but I don't usually. So the book that has Anne Frank in it, I didn't outline at all, which is crazy because it's a very unusual narrative. So it seems a little strange that I wouldn't have plotted. But one thing I really like to do is once I have a draft, I will outline what I have and then tweak the outline and then rewrite it based on the outline. So I think outlining is most useful in between your first and second drafts. Yeah. What inspired me to write what? What inspired me to write my new project? This was I started it in 2020, during when COVID was really, really scary and none of us knew what was going on. And I was having a really hard time focusing and writing anything. And I had quit my job to write and I couldn't write anything. And it was just really upsetting. And I was thinking about death a lot. And I found that I could only write in short snippets. So I started just writing obituaries of fake people. And they're all about 800 words long, which is 3 pages. So it was really easy to just knock out that one thing and kind of get to know one person and then the next day move on to something else. And it was also really cathartic to write about death and grief at a time that it was really terrifying. So I honestly don't think I could have written this book at any other time. My brain is just absolutely not in the same place as it was then. So I'm glad that I got it all down on paper, which just goes to show you when things are really hard, get things down on paper because you're going to be a totally different person when that thing is over. And it's really helpful to look back on how you felt at that time. Good? Yeah? Good.
All right, you can come down and talk to Eden. We also have books on sale down here for $17. And yeah, so by all means, come on down and say hello.